We've got Mark Mitchell with us today. Thank you for joining, Mark. Appreciate your time. This is going to be a really interesting one. The kind of work that we're going to be looking at is definitely a little bit different than what we normally see in the Gravity Sketch community, but something I want to see more of, which is like furniture and even some interior spaces. And yeah, for those of you out there that are watching, not familiar with me, I'm the design community manager at Gravity Sketch, and basically just get to talk to all of you out there, amazing creators using the tool. And it's just an honor to be able to talk to amazing individuals like Mark here. Yeah, without further ado, I'm just going to shoot it over to you, Mark. If you want to introduce yourself real quick and just let everybody know, like, what do you do? Who are you?
Sure. So I'm Mark Mitchell. I've been working in design agencies since the age of 16. So I started working in design companies before I went to university. I come from an artistic background. So my grandmother's very artistic. My dad's a geologist, so he'd work a lot with rocks and minerals and patterns, and it was something that I was always surrounded by when I grew up. So when I went to university, I was quite interested to create artistic objects. So when I graduated, I set up my own company, which is one of the best decisions I've ever made. So we manufacture kind of high-end lighting pieces, furniture pieces, particularly furniture pieces that are a little bit crazy. We'll show you some designs later in this video that are quite wacky. We do some ceramics pieces. The brand is very British, so obviously you can hear in my accent, I've got a British accent. For me, my identity as a British person is quite important. So that comes back into the design work we do often. So a lot of the designs that we do have a heritage feel to them. We don't really design drones or watches or like iPads and speakers. I don't really like electronics that much, which is quite ironic because we work with a lot of technology. But we use the technology to make the products, and we prefer the products to be analog in the end. But yeah, that's a little bit of background on what we do.
Yeah, I just love it. When we were talking I think it was last week, just having a little intro, because you reached out and you just wanted to show that like what you've been working on over at the studio, and I looked over the work and I realized that I actually previously seen some of the work before. It was I think it was like a year ago. And I remember it just really sticking out to me the these interesting spaces and styles, and so it's just cool to bring that like full circle almost in the conversation that we had last week. But when I was looking at the work, it is exactly as you described, like super artistic, but like functional and unique and analog. Like it's totally not digital at all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's where the best design comes from. Like sometimes we get so caught up in making products and features and functions. And for me, I developed the product with the idea of the emotion I want to create. So that's why like our products are quite varied and quite exotic and unusual, and they stick in your minds because the whole time we're not asking, how can we make this cheap, or how can we do this way. We're constantly looking at how people perceive the product and how we can tell a story with the product. So I think, Jaren, you're probably describing our hug lamps. So those went viral last year. So during the pandemic, I actually lived in China. As a designer, it's quite useful to live alongside the factories. I lived there for 2 years. But then the pandemic hit. We heard some news. Me and my manager, this was at the very early start. There were only rumors. We ran away to Indonesia and then to London to hide. Um, and that was quite a difficult decision for me to make because I left my whole life in China behind. I had a girlfriend, I had friends, I had an apartment, I had lots of things that I've purchased. I really had a life there. And to abandon all of that was very difficult. So I wanted to make a product that could capture the feeling that I knew I would have in my heart when I was reunited with my second life again in China and my
Wow.
girlfriend. So the hug lamp is a literal embodiment of the feeling that I would feel. This kind of idea that I would glow
Yeah.
with happiness when I not just saw her but embraced her. And I think as well that that element of embrace is something that we've lost during the pandemic. So it was quite important for me to make these designs tactile. So we covered them in fur. I remember when I made some prototypes, my manager was just like, you can't do that. You can't put fur on a lamp. We checked all the regulations. There's not really anything to stop you from doing it. So we did it and I posted it. And yeah, the work went viral, which is nice to see. I never really make products per se to make money. I make products to share them with people, to share the experience and emotion that I put into my work. So it was a shame when we released it and showed it online because we were only planning to release it for art galleries. So small limited releases, sadly a bit higher priced. But the reaction from the public was so big that we knew we had to mass produce it. So I'm only 24, so I really don't have the money to set up production, as I'm sure there's a lot of designers who are listening to me talk now, and they know how expensive it is to make products. It's between 30 to 150K, and it can be even higher for larger products. So the best way for me as a young designer to get to market was to license my work. And it's good because it means that you can work with a business that have already done product development and things, and you can learn from them. But it is a bit of a shame because you lose some of that creative control. So as a brand, what we intend to do as we move into the future is produce ourselves and try and reduce the amount of times we license works, unless it's with notable brands. But it's a good starting point if there's any junior designers listening. Definitely, just send out loads of emails. That's what I did. I think for the hug lamp, I sent out like 100 or 200 emails. I was talking very seriously with about 10 companies. We narrowed that down to 3 companies, and then from that, me and my manager made a decision. But yeah, just send out loads of emails. If you've got a product that's really good and people are asking to buy it, and you can't make it, then don't don't sort of not give it to the world. It's your duty as a designer to try and find a way to get it to the people. But
That's what I
so yeah, that was the hug lamp.
yeah, that's so great. And that's what I loved when we first met last week was when you were talking through your process. You really are driven to just produce these products and find any means necessary to bring these simple materials together, which I want to ask you about later, on sort of like the raw material approach that you have. I mean, there's not really a whole lot of um, crazy material science, if I'm maybe assuming too much, but it seems like a lot of the material choices are uh, very raw and basic, and I think that's intentional. And maybe you can talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, I think when it comes to materials, you obviously want to make your own materials. There's a great designer at the moment called Sabrina Marcellus who works a lot with resins to make these translucent products, and it's very beautiful to see. But it's very intensive for research and development. You've got to have a team of multiple people. You've got to have material scientists. For the hug lamp, actually, I wanted to develop my own fur. And then, the issue is that not only to develop the fur in the first place is very expensive, but if it's a custom material, it costs a lot more. So I think in university, the one thing that I really missed out on was the idea that you should use standard parts when necessary. So with the fur for the hug lamp, we're only going to use a custom fur if we sell it in an art gallery, which we will do. But for the mass production version, it just didn't make any sense. But that doesn't mean that the quality is reduced. I think we use basic materials, but we select them very carefully. So,
Mm.
we like to get as many materials as we can in the studio. What we tend to do is a large matrix grid. So we'll list out the different attributes of the product. Whether this is a ceramic, we want to see how smooth it is, how easy it is to clean, how easily it hides dirt, how durable it is, and then we score all of those metrics out of 10, and then at the end, you've got this ranking that tells you which your best product is. So
Wow.
there's an element for the hug lamp, for example. We sourced 120 swatches of fur. So I knew as soon as I couldn't use the fur material I wanted to design, I wasn't going to compromise. So we just went out. My desk was completely filled with these little swatches of fur. And we went through and we felt all of them. And I've just described to you the matrix that we do. It sounds very kind of scientific and mathematical. But for the hug lamp, some of the things that we were scoring were the feeling in the hand and the lightness of the hair, things that are very hard to define. So emotion and art comes into it. But with those basic materials, we've gone through a lot of process to make that final selection.
That's amazing. And it really comes through, really shows through in the products, I think. And um, I think we'll be actually showing some imagery as well as we've already been talking some of these things. With the hug lamp, I actually wanted to ask you, why do you think it was so popular when you released the renderings? Like, why do you think it just like took?
Mm. So I think during the pandemic, there were a lot of designers who were addressing the pandemic, that were maybe coming up with products like door hooks and stuff. And it was, whenever a current event comes about as an artist, I think you should react to that. And I didn't see any other designers react. When they were making products, it was generally face masks, which I think we can all agree we're sick of. So, you know, my thought was I can't move through this period without addressing this massive moment of my life. I was
Mm,
born in 1997. I haven't had many large world events happen, so I would say for me this is the biggest change to society that I've seen. And yeah, I felt I had to make something, and I think that was why the design went so far, because there weren't really any other designers who were doing what I was doing. It is obviously a tender subject. You don't want to feel like you're kind of taking advantage of the pandemic. So I made it very clear to the public where this design came from. We actually, we'll probably show in a minute, I made a series of 10 illustrations to show the passage of time as the hug lamps are separated. And then when they come back together, they glow with light. So if we have time, Jaren, we can put that on now.
you said that Gravity Sketch was really helpful in creating the lamps, and I wanted to ask you a little bit more in detail how exactly that was helpful in the process, because you said that specifically with the lamps, it was. Yeah, I'll let you explain it, but
Yeah,
I was curious for you to talk about that.
sure. Yeah, let me explain a little bit further. Just kind of a starting point. I've always thought it's quite strange as designers that we jump to paper and computer screens to make things, if that makes sense. We make products in 3D, and to work on a 2D surface is it's very distracting. I think you can go in the wrong direction. You can sketch designs that you can't actually CAD model very well. So that was the first thing that drew me to Gravity Sketch, because I wanted to work in 3D because my products are seen in 3D. So why would I work any other way? And then with hug lamps, for example, um, these are designs that you should really develop out of foam. You should really build them physically and test them together physically. Virtual reality allows you the ability to build these models, see them in 3D, and as well actually move your head through the objects so you can see where they intersect. So we were able to build the hug lamp. I think we did 16 revisions of the hug lamp. So each
Wow.
time, we CAD model it, we look at the position, probably 3D print it, make sure the center of gravity is right. What it also allowed us to do as well is I could stick the fur on straight away in Blender or Cinema 4D quite quickly. And that meant that we could adapt the shape again, because obviously the fur has a thickness to it, so the shape changes. And it basically meant I could do that whole iterative process in about it was sort of a week, whereas if you did this the traditional way, you're looking at a month of foam models and
Wow.
the
Yeah.
things don't work. And yeah, it was really exciting to work in that way, and it especially allowed us to build like the full size prototypes very quickly as well, because I just sent
Wow.
them off to a company and had the prototypes back. And yeah, it was without Gravity Sketch, it would have been slower, a lot more difficult. I think actually the final results, even if I worked in paper and CAD software like Rhino or SolidWorks or Mesh Mixer, I think the final result will be less. I wouldn't have been able to find that shape that I wanted. And
Yeah.
luckily, in the end, I did.
It seems like it was just kind of like it made sense. It was like, it was just like this tool works for this. Any other way, as you described, it would have been slower and probably more expensive. So I actually want to backtrack just a little and ask you about how did you discover Gravity Sketch? Like, how did you come
Mm.
across it and then eventually come to the decision like I want to probably incorporate this into the way I work?
Yeah. So I discovered Gravity Sketch a long time ago. I think I'm part of the ambassadors program or something. I
Right.
think at the moment it's free, isn't it, Jaren? So
Yes.
and I,
Yes.
I and I paid for it at the start. And if I'm honest, I'm still happy I paid for it.
Hmm.
I
Me too.
I yeah. When I first got a VR headset, I'm not really someone who plays video games that much. I got a VR headset because lots of people were. It's a new technology. It's interesting. I buy headsets and drones and things. So I bought this, and then I was looking through the different apps, and then I thought to myself, "Oh, I really did want to work in 3D. I want a CAD model in 3D." So I found a few different apps, and I enjoyed using Gravity Sketch the most because it was geared towards designers, as opposed to some of the other apps are about painting and drawing, and they're not so good for production. And yeah, I just started playing with it. I think the first design I did in Gravity Sketch was the squirrel chair, which we're probably going to show on the screen at the moment.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was so excited to make this chair because it was a shape that I'd never been able to make before. I work in Rhino and SolidWorks and things, and these kind of surface modeled objects can be quite hard to make sometimes. But in Gravity Sketch, it was just fun. It was so easy. It was like, I think I made it in 10 minutes. Obviously, I went through a lot of iterations afterwards, as any designer does. But yeah, I was just shocked at how quickly it came together. So actually, I think I've deleted all of the games off my VR headset now. I couldn't find anything that's as fun as making objects. I think I'm a little bit of a design nerd, so I don't really deleting the games wasn't much of a loss for me. I just enjoy making things. Like
Yeah.
every day is a new opportunity to make something new.
Yeah, that's really fascinating, and it seems to be the case that Gravity Sketch has, for designers, our fun free time is making stuff, and
Yeah.
so like it's almost like Gravity Sketch takes that place in the game world, but so much more than that, because of it's a tool that you can actually incorporate into your workflow as,
Hmm.
as in your case. But I wanted to ask you a little bit more on the 3D side of things, um, because when we first spoke, a lot of what you talked about was the fact that you use pretty much entirely 3D virtual renderings to you for marketing and for promotional visual work for your products.
Yeah.
And I wanted you maybe to, if you could just talk a little bit about why you do that and like and
Sure.
I'm sure by now we'll be scrolling and showing all of the work already, and people will realize like the work is so out there. I think with some of these images, but if you just want to talk a little bit about like why you've gone completely virtual with the visuals that you show.
Yeah, so I think I've already explained how expensive it is to develop products. The issue we have with being designers is that we always live inside of our heads, making new ideas, and then we put them through to manufacture and we release them. And the problem is you don't know if you've really done a good design until you start to talk to people or show the public. So what I enjoyed about working digitally to begin with was that I can develop ideas in a day. I can render them, I can post them, and if they're bad, I'll know because no one likes them, or people don't comment, and some people maybe say that this is not good, and it's good to get feedback that way. Sometimes I also post on a platform called Magosu, which is for students who are designers, and that's also a good platform to test on. So it was really just kind of a starting point to kind of get a foot in the door, start working in this industry. We're seeing a lot of other designers do something similar. So there's a designer called Andrea Reislinger who designed the Hortensia chair, which I think most people here have heard about. And that was actually put into production. It was originally a render, And people loved it so much that my friend Marcel Wanders, who owns a company called Moyen, he decided to buy the rights and produce the design.
Wow.
So, as a young designer, I saw that happen and I thought, I have to do something similar.
Yeah.
I really don't have the
Wow.
capital to start. And so the rendering software allowed me to kind of start and build a collection. But what I realize now is we did intend to kind of transition less and less in terms of digital visualizations. But the opportunities you have in these digital spaces is so much more exciting than photo shoots. We've done photo shoots before. You're talking like 5 to 15,000, depending in dollars on the complexity of the scene. When you've done the photo shoot, if you got something wrong, you kind of have to run the photo shoot again or find someone who's really good at Photoshop. And what's exciting about these digital visualizations is when we build these spaces, we can reuse them again at any time for very little cost. Basically, the cost for the electricity for my laptop.
Yeah.
And we can just, we can put light in interesting places. Sometimes I like to work as well with other designers' works. So as I mentioned before, I'm a big fan of Marcel Wanders. So we pull in a lot of his works and Mark Newson's works, and Philip Stark's works. These kind of pieces that cost like $3,000 to $6,000 for a chair. I can download online for $5 and put in the scene. I can really start to build
Yeah.
these spaces and experiences around my work.
Yeah, I just find that so compelling and so inspirational because, as everyone will be seeing already, that the imagery is almost dreamlike. Some of these images that you've created, and at the end of the day, the image is to inspire and to evoke an emotional response. And whether it's digital or physical, it's kind of a blurred line nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah, well, if I can extend on that, Jaren, I think it's interesting. At the start of this call, you described them as cool marketing images and things. And, I always think that we don't really do marketing, our brands. We don't have much of a marketing spend. We don't make those images because we want to try and get more attention. We get articles and things all the time. It's not a problem. We make the images to try and build an aura around the product. So we're going to show some images on the screen now, probably. So this is our orrery chandelier, and you can see that we've rendered it in a space that's very similar to Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. And the way that the light moves through the scene, it really casts these massive shadows that makes the product seem so much more dramatic, and it conveys the way that I see the product. All of these dream scenes, it's funny that you say that they're dreamlike because these are the kind of visions that I have in my head. And I just use the technology we have to try and make them so you guys can see as well.
Yeah, that's it. The chandelier is quite something too. It almost doesn't look like it should be a real thing, but it is a real thing.
Yeah, we've got samples here in the office, and I can't go into it too much, but we actually have 3 companies who are trying to license it at the moment. So yeah, it's really exciting to move from this kind of. It started with the digital render, and you obviously look for all the parts and build the thing, and then you've got the thing, and it's a really magical moment to start on the computer and then for it to turn into real life. Usually it might be the other way around sometimes. You've got these ugly looking prototypes in your office that are taking up space. And for us, it's always a magical to work in this way because we start off with, most of our clients actually ask, are these photographs? We're doing a project at the moment where, we designed some tables for a notable brand in collaboration with them. It will come out later in the year. And we actually had to sketch back over the renders because the person who owns this company, he's about 50, and he just couldn't wrap his head around what we were doing. He thought we'd made the product completely, and he told me, don't make the product, you're going to waste your money. And I had to explain to him that these were renders. And in the end, we just went back to the old school method of pro markers and pencils. We do obviously do the renders to provide the foundation and sketch over the top. But yeah, it's funny. It's a new technology that's arisen. This public is still getting used to it. Sometimes people don't know what are renders and what are real. I think if
Mhm.
you're a good designer and a good CGI artist, you can blur that line. And something really magical happens when you blur that line, because it doesn't become about the render anymore, if that makes sense. There's a lot of renders that you see that were obviously made in Keyshot very quickly. And I think people focus on the render,
Hmm.
which is such a shame, because the render is just a mechanism to convey the idea that you have. So for me, I'm always trying to achieve realism, not to deceive the audience, but because the focus really is the product.
Yeah.
I don't want people to like comment saying good render. I really don't care. I'm an industrial designer. I make products, so I just want to make people focus on the product, and that's
I
what we
love
go
that.
for.
And you're using the tool exactly for what it was made for, which is exactly what you said there. And yeah, we do sometimes we can get a little bit hyper focused on the render, the spicy renders, as you say on the as we say, in the on social media, just like there's whole channels dedicated to spicy renders, but there's nothing wrong with that. It's just it's a different focus.
Yeah, I think the thing is, you've just got to look at all of these things as a mechanism towards an end goal.
Yeah.
If you really love rendering, it's funny because people look at my renders and think, that I really just enjoy to sit down for 8 hours and build scenes like this. I don't enjoy that. I enjoy seeing my idea come to life. It's
Yeah.
simply just a way to get to an endpoint. So, but if you do enjoy rendering as much as like that's your focus, then go into CGI art. I
Yeah.
mean, but as a designer, you've got to keep an eye on your products, and keep focusing on what the product is, what it means, and develop that aura around the product so people can connect to it on an emotional level.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when we spoke last, you said that eventually you want to move away from the digital renderings if you can, after you maybe get some more funding and you can actually put more money towards these physical photo shoots. If you do that, do you still see there's a place for these digital rendering environments that are kind of dreamlike? I mean, where do you see
Yeah,
that?
I see. I'd quite like to separate it off into two very distinct kind of images. You basically have these product photographs that show you the detail in the materials and show you the craftsmanship and the quality. And those scenes and images that we photograph in real life will be very realistic. We're not going to work with funky colors. We're not going to build crazy sets and things that cost thousands. We just keep it very simple, very clean. That's the product. There it is. So when people come to buy things like the Hug Lamp, they're not in doubt as to how it will look in the end. And that will mean that if we do this with the physical imagery, for the renders, we want to make them more obviously renders. So recently, we've started to include things like clouds. That obviously you can't have a cloud in your house. We've started to include like more sci-fi feelings, trying to make it feel more like a render through the use of
Hmm.
materials, colors, and lighting that we do. So I do think that we will reduce the number of renders we do, but it's a very powerful technology. It allows us to build this atmosphere around the product, so we'll never completely abandon it. But my aim as a designer and now as a business person is just to establish a really solid brand, have a really good collection, get people excited about the work, and begin to sell it. And at the moment, we're just in kind of a limbo state. I founded the company a year ago. We've got a few products in development. We've got a massive sofa in development. So we're just trying to get started. And then, yeah, things will change in the future a little bit, but we will still use rendering.
Now, did you want to talk a little bit about the floating sofa at all?
Yeah. Yeah, I did actually. Well, this is a design that's taken up pretty much the whole of my year. It was funny actually, because it was a design that I published as a render visualization, and I had such a mixed response from the public. There were quite a lot of people who said, no, that's impossible. I myself, when I designed it, I actually designed the suspended sofa in Gravity Sketch originally, and I deliberately designed the proportions so I knew physically it would work. There was a structure under the blanket, if you guys are looking at the image now, and underneath the rug, there's a base plate. So, again, that was another one of these products that just went viral. There were articles written about it. We were reblogged quite often. I had people emailing me asking to buy it. And then the biggest sort of hint that it was a good product was that I was contacted by a chap called Stefani Giovanni. I actually haven't told you about this, Jaren. So this chap used to work for Alessi. He owns an awesome brand called Kibo, who make these really beautiful plastic products. And he'd seen the product. This is one of my design heroes, and emailed me and said, can we have a phone call? Can we discuss this? So we had a
Wow.
phone call, and he told me I should make it, which is funny because at the time we didn't really have the capital, but I'm just sitting there listening to one of my heroes tell me I need to do something. So
Wow.
we began to look around. We began to work with Stefano possibly for his business. We worked out the complexity of the product was a little bit too much for his brand. He makes these very simple products that are very well made and simple and effective. And suspended sofa is not simple at all. There's a cantilever hidden under the rug that takes quite a lot of force. If any of you have done your A level physics or high school physics, you'll know that the force as it moves away from the pivot increases the moment, as we call it. So actually designing the suspended sofa, the frame underneath, was very difficult. I think I did 32 iterations of this design. Each time we designed a frame, we would have a look at the weight. Again, we put that in an Excel spreadsheet. Again, as I told you before, we work a lot with matrices to make design decisions. We would test it, see how much weight we could put on. This is a process called FEA modeling, so finite element analysis. Basically, we look at how the material deforms when we apply weight to it, and where the forces are actually in the material. So yeah, that was like a month of my time just sitting in
Wow.
software every day, designing a frame. The first cantilever design, the frame that we did, was about 180 kilograms, which is just absolutely crazy. That's way too much. And it would only hold about 120 kilograms, which is not enough. If you consider that the sofa has to sit on the frame, and that's between sort of, if you can use lightweight materials like 15 kg or more heavy materials up to 40 kg, you're really only looking at the sofa being able to hold someone of about 80 kg, which is
Wow.
not so good.
Yeah.
So after all of that iterative process, we ended up with a design that weighed about 100 kg and can hold up to 250 kg, which is way more than it would ever need. It was a sofa that was designed for one person. So the shape of the sofa is actually very specific as well. The width of the middle cushion is only wide enough for one person to sit. And then the cushions that we have on the side are large and round enough in such a way that it encourages people not to sit on the arm. But even if they do, we kind of over-engineered it to make sure it wouldn't break. I was just thinking to myself how sad that would be if it did break, especially if it was at a trade show and then there's an article that says the floating sofa that doesn't float anymore. So
Oh,
yeah, but
I'm sure that
I'm
won't
so
happen.
no, it won't now. But yeah, I'm so happy with how the final result turned out. In fact, I assembled it here in my office. We're here in Amsterdam at the moment because there's a lot of suppliers who work in the design industry who are very good. And yeah, we assembled the design, and it was so funny as people from other offices and studios walk past, and they're just so confused. There's this chair just floating in the in the lobby of this kind of office building.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's quite a cool product because it brings that element of street performance that we see sometimes into the home. That was a little bit where the idea came from in the first place. I saw these street performers levitating, and from a design perspective, I was fascinated, not because they were levitating, but because people thought that they were.
Yeah.
The people had disassociated the rug on the ground, or the shape of their leg with the metal bar hidden inside, as
Yeah.
being a support material. And I thought, I have to do this in a home, but I quickly worked out why people didn't do that. It's not easy. If someone wants to copy my work, I don't want to tell you to go for it, but honestly, it's like good luck because it's not it's not that easy to design. But yeah, the design anyway should be finished soon. So we're just finishing the first unit at the moment. We'll post some photos on our Instagram. It's been a little bit slow to develop because we have made it out of 3 different materials 3 different times in testing. So we started with EPS 300, which is this kind of polystyrene that's very good for furniture. Then that was too difficult to make because I couldn't find a CNC machine big enough. I think the nearest CNC machine that's big enough is Oslo. And then to get the
Wow.
stuff from Oslo to Amsterdam is just, yeah, it's crazy. So in the end, we settled for kind of a wood lattice frame in the middle, which has taken a while to design. But yeah, when it's finished, you guys should definitely check it out. Grab a photo on it because I think your friends won't believe that you're floating in the air. It's also a very comfortable chair. We picked the nicest boucle fabric we could find. Again, the same process, you know, very basic materials, but just got loads of swatches. So this time there were 15 swatches of Bucille material. And you're closing your eyes, feeling them, testing them, talking to friends, talking to the upholsterers, trying to find the right material. And eventually we picked one, and then we've picked the foam inside, so it's very soft. And you know, it's nice to be able to sit on a cloud and relax sometimes, Jaren. It's a cool product.
Indeed, indeed. I mean, I wanted to ask you about the floating sofa because to me, it kind of embodies physically what we've been talking about, where you are blurring the line between these digital sort of representations of your products and wanting to build these physical things. It is this sort of dreamlike object that actually exists, and I think it just embodies everything that we've been talking about. And I just think that's really cool. And um, I wanted to ask you, where can people actually see the couch, and can they buy one?
Yeah, so of course they can buy it. Let me just fill you in on some of the background as to what it takes to make this chair, so that
Hmm.
when I explain the rough costings, you can have an idea. So,
Sure.
you know, the frame's made out of 100 kilograms of 12.5 mil cold rolled steel, which is then welded together using a robot. And then once we take that frame, we take it to a pair of upholsterers who spend a whole month developing, you know, this one structure. So already, if anyone's listening and they're thinking of buying the design, this is not something that we're mass producing. This is not really something that we can mass produce or want to either, because you know it's quite a complicated design. The fabric that we've picked, you know, alone just the fabric was 1,200 euros just to cover the sofa. You know, my sofa at home costs 1,200 euros for the whole sofa. So it's like, yeah, it's not such a cheap product. It's definitely north of 15K. It depends on where you buy it. Obviously, if you come direct to us, we'll tell you of the price including the delivery cost, because obviously we've got to ship it around the world. Um, but for the general public, you know, if you want to go see it, if you want to go try it out, we're going to be giving a whole bunch to a few different galleries. So there's a gallery in Dubai that I fly to next week, and we're chatting with them to see if they'd be interested in one or two. There's a gallery in Milan who are very interested, and there's someone in New York who is interested to buy one privately for themselves. So we think we're going to fly two over and give one to a gallery as well. So
Wow.
hopefully by summer, you know, there's a few of them around everywhere, and everyone can go see them. But yeah, we'll always publish on our website and our Instagram where they are. You can follow these awesome art galleries. Maybe if we're still negotiating the deals, if by the time this goes live, Jaren, on your screen, you'll probably see the names of the galleries that we're working with, and you can go follow them on Instagram and see when they're holding these events, because you know it's a product that really invites exhibition. You can't see it on the screen. You have to go sit on it, and you know, when I show it to people as well, they have to put their hands underneath to try and see where the strings are and things like that. So yeah, you've really got to go see it in real life. It's incredible.
Well, I would love to see one, absolutely in person. I'm sure I will at some point. Um, so, yeah, I just want to thank you, Mark, for your time and for going through your process, and really just what the studio is all about, and for giving an insight into a little bit of how it works and what it takes to create some of these products. I just find that super fascinating. I know everybody watching has probably been really interested too. So, um, I want to ask you just before we close, where can people find you? Where can they, basically see the work that you're doing, and stay up to date?
So our Instagram is Mark Mitchell Design, all one word. Um, all of our other social media is the same. So we have a TikTok account if you wanted to follow us on TikTok. Our website is mark.mitchelldesign.com. Um, yeah, you can find us there, but especially as well, keep your eye out on some blogs like El Decor and Yanko. We have some upcoming interviews coming with them, and we actually last month did a great interview with El Decor about our hug lamps, so you can hear more about the product there.
Awesome, amazing. Well, I just want to thank you, Mark. Did you have any final words or anything that you wanted to say to people watching?
Um,
Or
well, I'd actually like to say something to you and your team, Jaren. Cheers for making Gravity Sketch, because it's not just saved me a lot of money in blue foam and prototypes, but it's made design fun and interesting. Something like the hug lamps, making those shapes could have easily been a very painful activity. It could have been something that I avoided and didn't want to do. But working in VR, it feels like a game. The controls are intuitive. It was just really enjoyable to work like that, and it's meant that my production has increased. I'm able to make more designs, and yeah, all of this really wouldn't be possible, at least without your help.
well, we just love seeing stories like yours and seeing how the tool's being used. I mean, I've said this numerous times, but we're always amazed and surprised to see the ways that Gravity Sketch is being used, and the new applications that's involved with. So, thank you for reaching out, and thank you for being so open with your process, and for sharing that. It's really quite inspiring. So I just want to thank you again, Mark, for your time, and hope to catch up maybe down the line to see how things are going at the studio, and maybe do another
Yeah,
one of these
sure.
interviews and see what's up.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, next time I'm in America, I'll message you, and maybe we can grab a beer. It would be good
Oh,
to chat.
that'd be wonderful. I'd love that.
Yeah, nice one. Cheers, man.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for watching, and yeah, see you next time.
Bye, everyone.